Ambassador Kyle Harrison stood before the massive viewing window of the Federation Council Station, watching the endless stars stretch across the dark void of space. His hands were clasped behind his back as he tried to calm his nerves. The meeting today would decide whether Earth remained in the Galactic Federation or faced expulsion for what the aliens called dangerous military thinking. The council chamber behind him buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Some sounded like musical chirps, others like grinding metal, and a few resembled whispers carried on wind. Kyle had learned to understand most of them during his 2 years as Earth's representative, but today the conversations made his stomach turn with worry. Chancellor Zixithera clicked her mandibles together as she approached Kyle. The insect-like alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, her forearms moving in complex gestures that Kyle knew meant deep concern. Her compound eyes reflected the starlight as she spoke in her translated voice. Ambassador Harrison, we must discuss your species before the full council convenes. The concerns about Earth's military preparations have grown beyond simple worry. Kyle turned to face the Chancellor, keeping his expression neutral despite the growing tension. What specific concerns do you have, Chancellor? Earth has met all Federation requirements for membership. That is precisely the problem, interrupted Coordinator Veltarin, as the crystalline being approached them. The Nexari's body chimed softly. With each step, light refracting through his transparent form in patterns that indicated stress. Your world has met the minimum requirements and nothing more. Where are your orbital defense platforms? Your planetary shields? Your fortress networks? Before Kyle could answer, the chamber's main doors opened with a soft hiss. Admiral Jake Sullivan entered with confident strides, his Earth Fleet uniform crisp and professional. Behind him walked Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan, carrying a data pad filled with information about Earth's military doctrine. Kyle felt relief wash over him as the Admiral approached. Admiral Sullivan, welcome to the Federation Council Station, Kyle said with a slight smile. I believe you know, Chancellor, Zixithera and Coordinator Veltarin. Jake nodded respectfully to both aliens. Chancellor, Coordinator, thank you for arranging this meeting. I understand you have questions about Earth's defensive capabilities. Chancellor Zixithera's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Questions hardly covers our concerns, Admiral. We have reviewed your homeworld's military installations and frankly we are shocked by what we found. Or rather, what we did not find, added Coordinator Veltarin. His crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. Admiral, would you like to see what proper planetary defense looks like? Without waiting for an answer, Veltarin activated a holographic projector in the center of the chamber. The image showed a beautiful blue-green world surrounded by massive space stations, energy barriers, and weapon platforms. Hundreds of defensive installations orbited the planet in carefully planned layers. This is the Nexari homeworld, Veltarin explained with obvious pride. 7 layers of defensive barriers protect our people. Energy absorption fields can neutralize any attack. Fortress stations control every approach route. No enemy has threatened our world in over 3,000 years. Chancellor Zixithera gestured with 2 of her arms and the hologram changed to show another heavily fortified world. This one was surrounded by geometric patterns of defensive platforms that looked like a metallic web around the planet. The Vorthak homeworld employs a different but equally effective strategy, she said. Our shield generators create an impenetrable barrier around the entire planetary system. Our fortress networks can repel invasion fleets 10 times larger than our own forces. We have never lost a single civilian to enemy action. Admiral Sullivan studied both displays with interest, but his expression remained calm. Lieutenant Commander, Morgan stepped forward and activated her own data pad. Very impressive defensive systems, Lisa said professionally. Both of your species have clearly invested enormous resources in protection. May I ask how often these defenses have been tested in actual combat? The question seemed to surprise both aliens. Chancellor Zixithera's compound eyes shifted between the humans. Tested, Admiral? The point of proper defense is that it prevents combat from occurring. When enemies see our strength, they choose not to attack. Our barriers have deterred 17 different aggressive species over the past millennium, Coordinator Velteron added. They see our defenses and decide to find easier targets elsewhere. Jake nodded thoughtfully. And where do these easier targets come from? If everyone builds strong defenses, who do the aggressive species attack instead? Worlds with inadequate protection, Chancellor Zixthara replied immediately. Species that fail to properly defend themselves become victims. This is why we are so concerned about Earth. Lisa activated her datapad and projected a new hologram showing Earth from space. The blue marble hung in the void with only a few small space stations and patrol craft visible around it. Compared to the alien fortress worlds, Earth looked completely defenseless. This is what worries us, Velteron said, his crystalline form brightening with alarm. Your homeworld appears virtually naked to any attacker. Where are your defensive platforms, your barrier generators, your fortress networks? Admiral Sullivan exchanged a glance with Ambassador Harrison before answering. We have a different approach to military security. Earth's defense strategy focuses on mobility and rapid response rather than fixed fortifications. Mobility? Chancellor? Zixthara's mandibles clicked in confusion. Admiral, you cannot move a planet. How does mobility protect your civilians? We believe the best defense is a good offense, Lisa explained, reading from her datapad. Rather than waiting behind barriers for enemies to attack us, we prefer to identify threats early and neutralize them before they can harm our people. The EDAR aliens exchanged what Kyle recognized as worried looks. Coordinator Velteron's form pulsed with rapid light patterns that indicated deep concern. Admiral, this sounds dangerously aggressive, he said carefully. The Federation exists to maintain peace through mutual defense. If member species begin attacking others preemptively, it destabilizes everything we have built. We're not talking about unprovoked attacks, Jake clarified quickly. We're talking about responding to genuine threats before they can organize effective strikes against innocent populations. Dr. Ryan Carter entered the chamber at that moment, carrying several data tablets filled with historical information. The xenobiologist and cultural expert had been studying Federation military history since Earth joined the Alliance. Forgive my interruption, Ryan said as he approached the group. But I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding here about human military philosophy. Chancellor Zixthara turned her attention to the newcomer. Dr. Carter, please explain what you mean. Ryan activated one of his tablets showing various historical battles from Earth's past. Humans have learned through centuries of warfare that purely defensive strategies often result in higher casualties than offensive ones. When you only defend, the enemy chooses when, where, and how to attack. They can concentrate their forces at weak points while you spread yours to cover everything. But our defenses have proven effective, Coordinator Velteron protested. We have maintained peace for millennia. Have you, though? Ryan asked gently. Or have you simply passed the burden of fighting to less defended worlds? If aggressive species always find easier targets, someone is still suffering while you remain safe behind your barriers. The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Kyle could see both aliens struggling with the concept. Their entire civilization was built around the idea that strong defenses created peace. Admiral Sullivan decided to address their real concern directly. Chancellor Coordinator, we understand your worry about Earth's security, but we've survived and thrived using our military doctrine for centuries. Perhaps instead of viewing our approach as dangerous, you could consider it as a different but equally valid strategy. Before either alien could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as an urgent voice spoke over the communication system. All council members report to emergency stations immediately. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching fleet of unknown vessels. Size and capabilities suggest a major military force. This is not a drill. Chancellor Zixthara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she moved toward the command center. The Skarn Empire. It has to be. They have been conquering fringe worlds for months. Coordinator Velteron's crystalline form blazed with alarm. If the Skarn are moving against Federation space, we must activate all defensive protocols immediately, The aliens hurried to their emergency positions. Admiral Sullivan looked at Ambassador Harrison with a grim expression. Kyle, I think we're about to get a very practical demonstration of the difference between our military philosophies and theirs. The Federation was about to face its greatest test, and Earth's unconventional approach to warfare would either prove its worth or result in disaster for everyone involved. War leader Thakmor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display show dozens of green dots representing his advance fleet. Each dot was a warship filled with warriors ready to claim new territory for the Skarn Empire. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile as he observed the Federation's predictable response to his approach. Commander Vashitar, report on enemy movements, Thakmor growled to his second-in-command. The smaller Skarn officer consulted his instruments with nervous efficiency. War leader, the Federation forces are retreating to their homeworlds as expected. Their defensive positions are activating across multiple systems. No signs of offensive action. Thakmor's smile widened, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. These civilized species are so predictable. They build their pretty walls and wait for us to break them down. It makes conquest almost boring. Meanwhile, 3-star systems away, Captain Danny Brooks paced the bridge of the UES Phoenix, trying to understand what he was witnessing. The Federation fleets were abandoning forward positions and falling back to heavily defended worlds. Every alien ship was racing away from the approaching Skarn forces. Captain, I'm receiving another transmission from the Vorthak fleet, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her communication station. They're ordering us to retreat immediately to Earth's defensive perimeter. Danny stopped pacing and stared at the main view screen. Amy, what exactly do they think our defensive perimeter looks like? We don't have one. That's what I told them. Sir, the Vorthak commander seemed to think I was joking. Lieutenant Commander Ben Wilson approached from the navigation station, carrying a datapad filled with tactical information. Captain, I've been analyzing the Federation retreat patterns. They're abandoning everything beyond their fortress worlds. Supply stations, research outposts, even populated colonies are being evacuated. They're giving up territory without a fight? Danny asked in disbelief. It appears so, sir. Their doctrine seems to be falling back to heavily defended positions and waiting for the enemy to come to them. Danny shook his head. That's not defense. That's surrender with extra steps. Amy, get me Admiral Sullivan on a priority channel. Back on the Federation Council station, Admiral Jake Sullivan watched the same retreat unfold with growing concern. Chancellor Zix Thera and Coordinator Veltaran stood beside him at the main tactical display, both aliens radiating satisfaction with their species' defensive preparations. Admiral, as you can see, the Federation's time-tested defensive strategy is already in motion, Chancellor Zix Thera said proudly. All civilian populations are being moved behind our protective barriers. Our fortress worlds are activating their full defensive systems. Coordinator Veltaran's crystalline form pulsed with confident light. The Skarn will find no easy targets. When they encounter our defenses, they will realize the cost of attacking us is too high and seek conquest elsewhere. Admiral Sullivan studied the display showing Federation forces pulling back from dozens of systems. Chancellor, what about all the territory you're abandoning? The Skarn will control those systems without firing a shot. Temporary occupation only, Zix Thera replied. Once they realize they cannot break our defenses, they will withdraw. We will reclaim those systems peacefully. And if they don't withdraw? Sullivan asked. What if they decide to stay and use those systems as bases for future attacks? The question seemed to puzzle both aliens. Veltaran's form flickered with uncertain patterns. Admiral, aggressive species always move on when they encounter strong defenses. It is the natural order of conflict. Colonel Tracy Adams had been listening to the conversation from her position near the communications array. The Marine Corps. Officer stepped forward with a frown on her face. With respect, Coordinator, that's not how human military history works. When we encounter strong defenses, we don't just give up and go home. We find ways to overcome them or go around them. But that would be illogical, Chancellor Zix Thera protested. Attacking prepared defenses results in massive casualties. No rational military commander would choose such an approach. Tracy exchanged glances with Admiral Sullivan. Chancellor, what if the enemy doesn't care about casualties? What if they're willing to accept losses in order to achieve their objectives? Before either alien could respond, Dr. Ryan Carter approached the group with his data tablets. The xenobiologist had been studying Federation military records for hours, and his expression was troubled. Admiral, I've found something disturbing in the historical data, Ryan said quietly. The Federation's defensive strategy has been successful in deterring attacks on their homeworlds, but it hasn't prevented wars. It's just moved them to less defended systems. What do you mean? Veltaran asked, his crystalline form brightening. With interest, Ryan activated one of his tablets, showing a star map with various conflict zones marked in red. Over the past 1,000 years, the Federation has faced 17 different aggressive species. In every case, those species eventually found targets that couldn't defend themselves effectively. Yes, that is the natural consequence of inadequate defense, Zixthera said matter-of-factly. It demonstrates the importance of proper military preparation. But Chancellor, Ryan continued, those 17 aggressive species conquered a total of 437 worlds. Billions of people died or were enslaved because the Federation's defensive strategy didn't eliminate the threats. It just redirected them. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. Admiral Sullivan could see both aliens struggling with the concept. Their entire worldview was built on the idea that strong defenses created peace. Dr. Carter, you cannot blame the Federation for the actions of aggressive species, Veltaran said defensively. We are not responsible for protecting every world in the galaxy. I'm not blaming anyone, Ryan replied gently. I'm just pointing out that your defensive strategy doesn't actually end conflicts. It postpones them and passes the cost to others. At that moment, Captain Danny Brooks' voice came through the communication system. Admiral Sullivan, we have a problem. The Skarn Advance Fleet is setting up forward bases in the systems the Federation abandoned. They're not just passing through, they're staying. Admiral Sullivan activated the communication panel. Captain, what's their current position and strength? 17 light-years from the nearest Federation fortress world, sir. They've established supply depots and communication arrays. It looks like they're preparing for a long-term occupation, not a quick raid. Chancellor Zixthera's compound eyes widened in surprise. But that is not how aggressive species behave. They should be probing our defenses, not establishing permanent positions. Unless they've learned from previous encounters with the Federation, Colonel Tracy Adams suggested, if they know you'll retreat behind your barriers, they can take their time setting up proper supply lines and siege positions. Coordinator Veltaran's form pulsed with rapid, anxious patterns. Admiral Sullivan, surely your species has encountered similar situations. How do you handle enemies who refuse to follow standard military doctrine? Jake considered the question carefully before answering. Coordinator, we don't wait for enemies to follow our expectations. We adapt our tactics to deal with whatever threats we face. But how? Zixthera pressed. Your homeworld has no defensive barriers. How do you protect your people from enemies who establish forward positions? We don't let them establish forward positions, Colonel Adams answered bluntly. If an enemy tries to set up bases near our territory, we destroy those bases before they can become a threat. That sounds dangerously aggressive, Veltaran said with concern. Such actions could provoke the very attacks you're trying to prevent, or they could prevent those attacks entirely, Dr. Carter interjected. If you eliminate an enemy's ability to threaten you, they can't launch attacks in the first place. The communication system crackled with another message from Captain Brooks. Admiral, the Skarn are sending out scout ships. They're mapping Federation defensive positions and looking for weak points. They're not planning to attack the fortress worlds directly. What are they planning? Sullivan asked. Unknown, sir, but based on their movement patterns, I'd say they're looking for ways to bypass the defenses entirely. Maybe strike at supply lines or support facilities. Chancellor Zixthera's mandibles clicked rapidly with growing alarm. That is not possible. Our defenses protect all critical infrastructure. Chancellor, Admiral Sullivan said carefully, What about the infrastructure that connects your defended worlds? Supply routes, communication networks, trade stations? The silence that followed was answer enough. The Federation's defensive strategy was designed to protect static positions, not mobile operations or extended supply lines. Admiral, Veltaran said quietly, if the Skarn attack our supply networks instead of our fortress worlds, our defenses become irrelevant. Colonel Adams nodded grimly. That's exactly what human military planners would do when facing superior, defensive positions. Find the weak points and exploit them. Dr. Carter consulted his data tablets again. According to my research, the Federation has never faced an enemy that was willing to take the time to properly analyze their defensive strategy. Previous aggressive species were too impatient for extended campaigns. Admiral Jake Sullivan stood alone in his quarters aboard the Federation Council Station, staring at the star map displayed on his wall screen. Red markers showed Skarn positions spreading across formerly Federation territory like a disease. The aliens were moving faster than anyone had expected, and their strategy was becoming clearer with each passing hour. A soft chime announced an incoming priority message from Earth Command. Sullivan activated the secure channel, and the face of Fleet Admiral Patricia Hayes appeared on his screen. Jake, I've been reviewing the situation reports. The Federation is completely unprepared for this type of warfare, she said without preamble. That's an understatement, Patricia. They're so focused on fortress defense that they can't see the bigger picture. The Skarn are going to cut their supply lines and isolate their defended worlds. How long before the Federation realizes their strategy isn't working? Sullivan rubbed his forehead tiredly. They're starting to understand, but they still want us to fall back and defend Earth like they're defending their homeworlds. They can't comprehend that we might have a better approach. Jake, I'm giving you full authorization to implement Operation Forward Shield. Use your judgment on timing and scope. Sullivan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Operation Forward Shield was Earth's contingency plan for exactly this type of situation. Understood, Admiral. I'll begin preparations immediately. After ending the communication, Sullivan called Captain Danny Brooks aboard the UES Phoenix. Within minutes, Danny's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but alert. Captain, I need you to assemble a reconnaissance task force. Select ships with the best stealth capabilities and experienced crews. Sir, the Federation has ordered all vessels to maintain defensive positions, Danny replied carefully. Captain, I'm authorizing a special operation under Earth Command directive. We need intelligence on Skarn capabilities and intentions before they complete their forward deployments. Danny's expression shifted to one of understanding. I'll take Phoenix and request Captains Greg Martinez and Susan Clark to join with their ships. Tempest and Falcon both have advanced stealth systems. Approved. But Danny, this has to be completely covert. If the Federation discovers what we're doing before we can show results, it could cause a diplomatic crisis. Understood, Admiral. We'll be invisible. 2 hours later, 3 Earth vessels slipped away from their assigned patrol routes. The UES Phoenix, UES Tempest, and UES Falcon engaged their stealth systems and began moving towards Skarn-occupied territory. Their departure went unnoticed by Federation sensors, which were designed to detect incoming threats rather than monitor friendly vessel movements. Captain Greg Martinez studied his instruments aboard the Tempest as they approached the first Skarn forward base. Captain Brooks, I'm reading massive energy signatures from that supply depot. They're not just storing materials, they're manufacturing equipment. Captain Susan Clark's voice came through the communication channel from the Falcon. I've got similar readings from the communications hub. The Skarn aren't planning a quick strike, they're setting up permanent infrastructure. Danny nodded grimly as he watched the tactical display. Amy, are you picking up any of their communications? Lieutenant Amy Foster worked at her station with intense concentration. Yes, sir, but it's heavily encrypted. Give me a few minutes to run it through our translation algorithms. Meanwhile, back on the Federation Council Station, Ambassador Kyle Harrison was facing increasingly difficult questions from alien officials who had noticed the absence of human vessels from their assigned positions. Ambassador, where are your ships? Chancellor Zix Thera demanded, her mandibles clicking with agitation. They were ordered to maintain defensive formations. Kyle kept his expression neutral. Chancellor, Earth vessels are conducting routine security patrols within their assigned operational area. Coordinator Veltaran's crystalline form pulsed with suspicious light patterns. Ambassador, our sensors show no human vessels in the defensive perimeter. Have they returned to Earth? I assure you, Coordinator, Earth's ships are where they need to be for the defense of Federation territory. Dr. Ryan Carter had been studying more Federation military records and approached the group with new information. Chancellor, I've discovered something important about previous Skarn campaigns. They always follow the same pattern. What pattern? Zixthera asked, temporarily distracted from questioning Kyle about the missing ships. Ryan activated his data tablet, showing a series of star maps. The Skarn establish forward bases, then systematically cut supply lines to isolated defenders. They don't attack fortress worlds directly. They wait until defenders run out of supplies and surrender. Veltaran's form flickered with alarm. That cannot be correct. Aggressive species always attack defended positions eventually. Not the Skarn, Ryan continued. They've conquered 47 different civilizations using this exact strategy. They're patient and methodical. They'll blockade your fortress worlds and wait for you to starve. The implications of this revelation were still sinking in when the communication system activated. Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice came through clearly from the Phoenix. Federation Council Station, this is Lieutenant Foster aboard UES Phoenix. We have urgent intelligence regarding Skarn operations. Chancellor Zixthara whirled toward the communication panel. Lieutenant, what is your current position? You were ordered to maintain defensive formations. Chancellor, with respect, we've discovered information that changes everything about this conflict. Admiral Sullivan entered the chamber at that moment, having been summoned by Kyle. He moved to the communication panel with purposeful strides. Lieutenant Foster, report. Admiral, the Skarn have established 17 forward bases in previously abandoned Federation systems. They're not temporary camps, sir. These are permanent military installations with manufacturing capabilities, supply networks, and long-range communication arrays. Coordinator Veltaran's form blazed with shocked light. 17 bases? How is that possible? They only arrived 3 days ago. Captain Danny Brooks's voice joined the conversation. Coordinator, they didn't build these bases in 3 days. They've been planning this campaign for months, maybe years. The infrastructure was pre-manufactured and shipped in pieces. That's impossible, Chancellor Zixthera protested. Our intelligence networks would have detected such preparations. Chancellor, Admiral Sullivan said carefully, your intelligence networks focus on monitoring activities near Federation territory. The Skarn were building these components in their home systems, far from your sensors. Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice crackled through the speakers again. Admiral, I've translated some of their communications. The Skarn are planning to implement a complete blockade of all Federation fortress worlds within 2 weeks. Blockade? Veltaran's crystalline form pulsed rapidly, but our defenses can break any blockade. Captain Susan Clark's voice joined, from the Falcon. Coordinator, they're not planning to blockade your planets directly. They're going to control all the space routes between your worlds. No supply ships, no communication, no reinforcements. The chamber fell silent as the aliens processed this information. Dr. Ryan Carter consulted his historical data again. This matches their previous campaigns exactly, he said quietly. The Skarn isolate defended worlds and wait for internal problems to weaken resistance. Food shortages, equipment failures, social unrest. How long can your fortress worlds operate without external supplies? Admiral Sullivan asked. Chancellor Zixthera and Coordinator Veltaran exchanged worried looks. Our worlds are self-sufficient for basic needs, Zixthera said slowly, but advanced military equipment requires rare materials that must be imported. And how long before your defensive systems begin failing without maintenance supplies? Colonel Tracy Adams asked, joining the conversation. Perhaps 6 months, Veltaran admitted reluctantly, but surely the blockade cannot last that long. Captain Greg Martinez's voice came through the communication system with new urgency. Admiral, we've detected Skarn ships moving toward the main trade routes between Vorthak and Nexari space. They're positioning to cut the supply lines within 48 hours. Admiral Sullivan looked at the alien officials with grim determination. Chancellor Coordinator, we need to act now before they complete their deployments. Once those supply routes are cut, your options become very limited. What do you propose? Zixthera asked, her compound eyes reflecting growing desperation. We implement human military doctrine, Sullivan replied. We don't wait for them to complete their strategy. We disrupt it before they can use it against you. That sounds dangerously aggressive, Veltaran said with concern. What if attacking their positions provokes them into faster action? Colonel Adams stepped forward. Coordinator, they're already taking action. The question is whether we respond to their moves or force them to respond to ours. Captain Danny Brooks's voice interrupted the discussion. Admiral, we've detected Skarn scout ships heading toward our position. I think they know we're here. All ships, maintain stealth and return to base immediately, Sullivan ordered. We have the intelligence we need. As the communication ended, Admiral Sullivan turned to face the alien officials. War Leader Thakmor roared in fury as his tactical officer delivered the unwelcome news. 3 unknown vessels had penetrated deep into Skarn-controlled territory and escaped without being identified. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had dared to spy on his operations so boldly. Commander Vashitar, how did these ships avoid our sensors? Thakmor demanded, his claws scraping against the metal armrest of his command chair. War Leader, their stealth technology is unlike anything we have encountered. Our detection systems registered only minor energy fluctuations that could have been sensor errors. Could have been, Thakmor repeated dangerously. But were not. These mystery ships gathered intelligence on our forward bases and supply operations. This suggests a level of tactical thinking we have not seen from the Federation. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Phoenix, Captain Danny Brooks was trying to avoid 3 Skarn hunter-killer groups that had been sent to locate the reconnaissance vessels. The stealth systems were holding, but the enemy was getting closer with each sweep. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Sullivan, Lieutenant Amy Foster reported from her communication station. Put him through, but keep it brief. We can't risk the Skarn detecting our signal. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through clearly despite the encryption. Captain Brooks, you are authorized to implement Phase 2 of Operation Forward Shield. All restrictions on engagement are lifted. Danny felt his pulse quicken. Phase 2 meant they were moving from intelligence gathering to active operations. Understood, Admiral. What are our primary targets? Disrupt their supply network and communication systems. Show the Federation what proactive defense looks like. Sir, what about the Skarn ships hunting us? Deal with them as you see fit. Captain, the time for hiding is over. Back on the Federation Council Station, Ambassador Kyle Harrison was facing intense pressure from alien officials who were demanding answers about human activities. Chancellor Zixthara paced back and forth on her multiple legs, her agitation visible in every movement. Ambassador, our long-range sensors detected weapons fire in the Kepler-7 system. That system was evacuated and is now under Skarn control. What are human vessels doing there? Kyle maintained his diplomatic composure despite knowing exactly what was happening. Chancellor, I can only tell you that Earth forces are working to protect Federation interests. Coordinator Veltaran's crystalline form pulsed with anxious energy. Ambassador, engaging the enemy in offensive operations violates all Federation military protocols. Such actions could provoke massive retaliation. Coordinator, Dr. Ryan Carter interjected as he approached the group. I've been studying the tactical situation and I believe human actions are preventing worse outcomes, not causing them. How can attacking the enemy prevent retaliation? Zixthara asked in confusion. Ryan activated his data tablet, showing a projection of Skarn supply movements. Chancellor, the Skarn were 6 hours away from completing their supply network when human forces struck. If they had finished those preparations, they would have been able to maintain a siege indefinitely. Before anyone could respond, the main viewing screen activated to show Captain Greg Martinez aboard the UES Tempest. Behind him, the bridge was clearly in combat status with red alert lighting and crew members working frantically at their stations. Federation Council Station, this is Captain Martinez. We have successfully neutralized the Skarn supply depot in the Kepler-7 system. Chancellor Zixthara's compound eyes widened in shock. Captain, you attacked a Skarn installation? That is an act of war. Chancellor, with respect, they declared war when they invaded Federation territory. Greg replied calmly. We're just fighting it more effectively than anyone expected. Admiral Sullivan entered the chamber and moved to the communication panel. Captain Martinez, report on enemy response to our operations. Admiral, the Skarn are confused and angry. They've never faced an enemy that strikes their supply lines instead of attacking their main forces. 3 hunter-killer groups are searching for us, but our stealth systems are holding. What about the depot itself? Completely destroyed, sir. The Skarn won't be using it to supply their blockade operations. We've also damaged their communication relay, which should disrupt coordination between their forward bases. Coordinator Velteran's form flickered with disbelief. Captain, you destroyed an entire military installation. How many casualties did you suffer? None, Coordinator. We struck fast and withdrew before they could mount an effective defense. That's the advantage of offensive tactics over defensive ones. Dr. Carter stepped closer to the viewing screen. Captain, can you explain to the Federation representatives how destroying enemy supplies serves a defensive purpose? Greg nodded, understanding. Dr. Carter, it's simple mathematics. The Skarn were using that depot to supply their blockade ships. Without those supplies, they can't maintain their positions around Federation worlds. We prevented attacks by eliminating the enemy's ability to sustain them. Chancellor Zixthara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this information. But Captain, if you destroy their supplies, won't they simply attack Federation worlds directly to obtain what they need? That's exactly what we want them to do, came Captain Susan Clark's voice as her image appeared on another part of the screen. When enemies attack defended positions out of desperation, they make mistakes we can exploit. Admiral Sullivan addressed both captains. Status report on Phase 2 operations. Captain Brooks joined the communication from the Phoenix. Admiral, we've identified 12 critical nodes in the Skarn supply network. If we can eliminate 6 of them, their entire forward deployment becomes unsustainable. Proceed with the mission, but coordinate with Captains Martinez and Clark. I want simultaneous strikes that prevent the enemy from adapting their defenses. Understood, sir. Beginning coordinated assault in 30 minutes. As the communication ended, Coordinator Velteran approached Admiral Sullivan with obvious concern. Admiral, I must protest these aggressive actions. The Federation has maintained peace for centuries through defensive strength, not offensive warfare. Coordinator, Colonel Tracy Adams said as she joined the conversation. How much peace will you have when the Skarn control all the space between your worlds? When your people are starving because supply ships can't reach them? Our defensive systems can protect us until the Skarn lose interest and withdraw, Zixthara insisted. Dr. Carter consulted his data tablets. Chancellor, according to historical records, the Skarn have never withdrawn from a conquest. Once they establish forward positions, they stay until they achieve complete victory. That cannot be correct, Velteran protested. No aggressive species maintain such persistence. The Skarn conquered the Altarian Empire using exactly this strategy, Ryan continued. The siege lasted 3 years. The Altarians had excellent defenses, but they eventually surrendered due to supply shortages and internal collapse. The implications of this information settled over the alien officials like a cold weight. Admiral Sullivan decided to address their real fear directly. Chancellor Coordinator, you're worried that human tactics will escalate the conflict. But the conflict is already escalated. The Skarn are implementing a strategy designed to force your surrender without directly attacking your defenses. Our actions are disrupting that strategy before it can succeed. But what if the Skarn respond by attacking our homeworlds directly? Zixthara asked nervously. Then they'll be fighting the kind of battle your defenses are designed to handle, Colonel Adams replied. But they'll be doing it with damaged supply lines, disrupted communications, and reduced strategic reserves. The viewing screen activated again to show all 3 human captains reporting simultaneously. Captain Brooks spoke first. Admiral, simultaneous strikes on 6 Skarn supply nodes have been completed successfully. Enemy supply capacity reduced by approximately 60%. Captain Martinez added, "Their communication network is severely damaged. We're intercepting confused signals as various Skarn commanders try to re-establish contact with each other." Captain Clark concluded, "Most importantly, sir, 3 Skarn fleets that were moving toward Federation worlds have been forced to return to defend their supply lines." Admiral Sullivan turned to the Federation representatives with satisfaction. "Chancellor, Coordinator, observe the results of offensive action. Instead of waiting for the Skarn to complete their blockade, we've forced them to abandon it to protect their own installations." Chancellor Zixathera stared at the tactical display showing Skarn forces in disarray. "Admiral, you have achieved in one day what our defensive strategies could not accomplish in months of preparation." "That's because defense and offense serve different purposes," Dr. Carter explained. "Defense protects what you have. Offense eliminates threats before they can harm what you're protecting." Coordinator Veltaran's crystalline form pulsed with wondering light patterns. "You have turned their strength against them. They plan to use patience and persistence, but your actions force them to react quickly to protect their own assets." "Exactly," Admiral Sullivan confirmed. "We've changed the nature of the conflict from a siege to a running battle, and running battles favor the side with better mobility and tactical flexibility." War Leader Thakmor stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display that showed his carefully planned invasion falling apart. Red markers indicated destroyed supply depots, damaged communication relays, and confused fleet positions. In 40 years of conquest, he had never faced an enemy that fought like this. "Commander Vashitar, how many of our forward installations remain operational?" he growled, trying to control his rising anger. "War Leader, only 6 of 17 supply depots are still functional. Communication between our fleets is operating at 30% efficiency. Several of our blockade groups have been forced to withdraw to defend supply lines." Thakmor's claws scraped against the metal console. "These humans fight like no civilized species I have encountered. They strike like raiders but with the precision of a military force." "War Leader, perhaps we should consider negotiating with the Federation. This campaign is not proceeding as planned." "No!" Thakmor roared. "The Skarn Empire does not retreat from inferior species. If these humans want to fight, we will give them the war they seek. Prepare the main fleet for direct assault on their homeworld." "Sir, their world appears to have minimal defenses. Surely a full fleet assault is unnecessary." "Commander, these humans have cost us 6 months of preparation and significant resources. They will learn what happens when the Skarn Empire is challenged directly." Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Sullivan was coordinating the final phase of Operation Forward Shield from the Federation Council Station. The success of human tactics had convinced even the most skeptical alien officials, but the real test was yet to come. "Admiral," Captain Danny Brooks reported through the communication system, "our long-range sensors detect massive Skarn fleet movements. It looks like they're abandoning their siege strategy and moving toward Earth." Chancellor Zixathera's mandibles clicked with alarm. "Admiral Sullivan, the Skarn main fleet contains over 200 warships. Surely you cannot defend against such numbers with Earth's limited defenses." Admiral Sullivan smiled calmly. "Chancellor, you're still thinking defensively. We're not going to defend against their fleet. We're going to destroy it." Coordinator Felturan's crystalline form pulsed with confused patterns. "Admiral, how can you destroy a fleet twice your size without defensive platforms or fortress installations?" "By using the same principles we've demonstrated throughout this campaign," Colonel Tracy Adams replied as she approached the group. "We're not going to wait for them to reach Earth. We're going to meet them halfway." Dr. Ryan Carter activated his data tablet, showing a 3-dimensional display of the solar system. "The key is understanding that Earth's defenses aren't located around the planet. They're distributed throughout the entire star system." "I see no defensive installations on your display," Zixathera observed. "That's because our defenses are mobile," Admiral Sullivan explained. "Every human ship is a defensive platform. Every fleet can become a fortress. But unlike static defenses, we can move our protection to wherever it's needed most." Captain Greg Martinez's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, the Tempest is in position at Rally Point Alpha. Captain Clark reports Falcon is ready at Rally Point Beta. Acknowledged." Captain Brooks, what's your status? Phoenix is holding at Rally Point Gamma, sir. All ships report ready for Operation Final Shield. Chancellor Zixathera looked confused. Admiral, your ships are scattered across 3 different systems. How does this protect Earth? Watch and learn, Chancellor, Admiral Sullivan replied. Amy, show them the tactical projection. Lieutenant Amy Foster activated the main viewing screen, displaying the Skarn fleet's approach route toward Earth. 3 separate groups of human ships were positioned along that route, each one days away from the others. The Skarn expect to fight one decisive battle at Earth, Colonel Adams explained. Instead, they're going to fight 3 separate engagements against fresh forces each time. Coordinator Veltaran's form brightened with understanding. You are using the enemy's momentum against them. Each battle will weaken them before they reach their objective. Exactly, Dr. Carter confirmed. And because our forces are mobile, we can concentrate our strength at the point of contact while keeping the rest of our fleet safe. The first engagement began 18 hours later when Captain Martinez led the Tempest into battle against the Skarn advance guard. The human ship appeared on Skarn sensors just long enough to launch a devastating strike against their lead vessels, before disappearing back into space. Direct hit on their flagship, Martinez reported. Enemy formation is breaking up to pursue us. Execute withdrawal sequence, Admiral Sullivan ordered. Lead them into the prepared engagement zone. What followed was unlike anything the Federation had ever witnessed. Instead of standing and fighting, the human ship led the Skarn forces on a running battle that lasted for hours. Each time the enemies thought they had cornered their prey, the humans would strike and fade away, inflicting damage while avoiding decisive engagement. Admiral, this is incredible, Chancellor Zixathera said as she watched the tactical display. Captain Martinez is fighting an entire Skarn squadron and winning. He's not fighting them, Admiral Sullivan corrected. He's defeating them. There's a difference. By the time the first engagement ended, the Skarn advance guard had lost 6 ships and was too damaged to continue pursuing. Captain Martinez had suffered only minor damage to his vessel. How is this possible? Coordinator Veltaran asked in amazement. Mobility and tactical flexibility, Colonel Adams replied. Captain Martinez never fought on the enemy's terms. He forced them to fight on his terms instead. The second engagement occurred 2 days later when Captain Clark intercepted the main Skarn fleet. This time the enemy was ready for hit-and-run tactics, but the humans had prepared a different surprise. Captain Clark, execute Formation Delta. Admiral Sullivan ordered. What appeared to be a single human ship suddenly became 5 as stealth vessels revealed themselves around the Skarn fleet. The enemies found themselves surrounded and under attack from multiple directions simultaneously. Impossible, War Leader Thakmor transmitted from his flagship. Your ships were not there moments ago. War Leader, Captain Clark responded calmly. You were looking for one ship in the wrong place. We were 5 ships in the right places. The coordinated attack devastated the Skarn formation. Ships that had been advancing confidently toward Earth suddenly found themselves fighting for survival against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Admiral, Dr. Carter observed, the Skarn are experiencing something they've never encountered before, an enemy that refuses to be predictable. That's the essence of human military doctrine, Admiral Sullivan replied. We adapt faster than our enemies can respond. The final engagement came when the remaining Skarn fleet, now reduced to less than half its original strength, reached Earth's outer solar system. Captain Brooks was waiting with the Phoenix and a surprise that would end the invasion permanently. War Leader Thakmor, Admiral Sullivan transmitted directly to the enemy flagship. You wanted to see Earth's defenses. Allow me to show you. Suddenly, space around Earth filled with ships. Not massive fortress platforms or orbital defense stations, but hundreds of mobile vessels that had been hidden throughout the solar system. Patrol craft, cargo haulers, even civilian ships armed with basic weapon systems. You see, War Leader, Admiral Sullivan continued. Every human ship is part of our defense. Every citizen is a potential warrior. You're not facing a military. You're facing an entire civilization that refuses to surrender. War Leader Thakmor stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Instead of the defenseless world he had expected to conquer, He faced an enemy that had turned their entire star system into a trap. "This is impossible," he growled. "No species can mobilize such numbers so quickly." "Any species can do it," Captain Brooks replied, "if they're willing to think beyond traditional defensive concepts." The final battle was over before it truly began. Faced with overwhelming numbers and an enemy that had already demonstrated superior tactics, the remaining Skarn forces surrendered rather than face complete destruction. 3 months later, Ambassador Kyle Harrison stood before the Federation Council as they formally adopted new military doctrines based on human tactical principles. Chancellor Zixthera and Coordinator Veltarin had become strong advocates for the changes. The Federation's new Strategic Mobility Initiative will train all member species in offensive defense tactics, Zixthera announced. "We have learned that the best way to protect our people is to ensure threats cannot develop in the first place. Our fortress worlds will remain," Veltarin added, "but they will serve as bases for mobile fleets rather than static defensive positions. We will take the fight to our enemies instead of waiting for them to bring the fight to us." Dr. Ryan Carter approached Admiral Sullivan with a satisfied expression. "Admiral, early reports suggest that 3 different aggressive species have abandoned planned attacks on Federation territory. Word is spreading that the Federation now fights back." "That's the real victory," Admiral Sullivan replied. "We haven't just defeated the Skarn. We've changed how the entire galaxy thinks about warfare." Colonel Tracy Adams joined the conversation. "Sir, what's our next mission?"